Welcome, everyone. This is the Shooting It Straight podcast with Justin Jackson. I'm producer John. We are so excited to be back for season 2 of the show. If I'm talking to Justin, that means we are getting closer and closer to the start of another Carolina basketball season, which is very exciting. I want to take a quick second before we get into the show to hit on a few things for all of our viewers. We are live this season, live every single Monday night on the Inside Carolina YouTube channel. So if you're watching live, be sure to shout us out and leave a comment in the chat. Justin and I will read the comments as the night goes along and as the show goes along. So appreciate everyone watching with us. And also, we want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors as well. We're sponsored by Johnny T-shirt and we're sponsored by Congruity HR, where Tar Heel fans can get a free payroll and HR needs assessment. Before I go any further with the show, Justin, how are you? How is your summer? How have you been?
Oh man. Well, yeah, I'm first and foremost happy to be back. Happy to run this one back. I am back home. I know last year we did a lot while I was in Dallas playing in the G League, and um, now I'm back home in Tennessee, which is where we call home now. And it's been awesome. Just been at home trying to corral these two little ones, watching them grow and just enjoying being a dad and a husband and enjoying time with the family. So obviously excited to get back on this and get back close to watching Carolina basketball. But it's been a good time to kind of just hang out and relax with the family.
We did some shows last year where you were in Mexico City, you were in North Dakota or South Dakota. I can't even remember which one. So it'll be good for you to just be home this year, not have to deal with the G League travel throughout the year as we start to break down this UNC basketball team. Let's start by talking a little bit about the roster. I want to run through some of the new names and faces before Justin you get in here and give some of your first impressions about the roster. So the three headlining freshmen that UNC fans need to know: Drake Powell, Ian Jackson, and James Brown. And then, of course, in the transfer portal world, there's always going to be some new names to know. So Ven Allen Lubin, Cade Tyson, Tyshawn Claude, those are some of the new names that UNC added to their existing core for this basketball team. Justin, when you start to think about this team and this season, what are your first impressions of the roster?
um, I think we had talked about this before, but I think this is one of the more exciting years from the standpoint of you don't necessarily know what you're going to get from this team. I mean, like you said, you've got three freshmen coming in, two of which are, I think, as of right now, expected to be really big pieces for this team. Um, and we've seen how it takes a little bit of time to acclimate, get used to the speed and the physicality and all that kind of stuff. So to see that maturity and that evolution throughout the year is going to be interesting. I think also the ability to rebound. The size of this team is totally different. You lose a guy like Armando. I know Coach Davis said in his press conference how Armando is one of one, and the amount of rebounding and physicality that he brought down low is going to be difficult to replace. But I think like he also mentioned in his press conference, it's going to be a group effort, and it's going to be in different ways. It's going to be in different, um, situations of trying to, basically, make up for some of what you're losing in Armando. So I think looking at this roster, I think it's scoring wise, I think is what's so appealing to me. I think they've got a bunch of guys that can put the ball in the basket, including a couple of those freshmen, and obviously RJ coming off the season that he had, and guys like Jalen Washington stepping into a big role, guys like that. I don't think scoring is necessarily going to be an issue. I think for me, it's going to be interesting to see defensively and rebounding. How do they make up for some of the production that they lost? I think um, a lot of people are going to kind of brush over the fact that we also lost Harrison Ingram, who was a huge, huge piece for this team. And so I'm excited. I think it's one of those years where I'm just, I can't wait to kind of see that first game start. And like you said, that's why they play the games. You got to kind of see once you roll that ball out there what happens. So um, I think it should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up rebounding. When you think of UNC basketball, so often you think of rebounding and offensive rebounding. Last year, that was a strength of this team. Last year, Carolina led the ACC in rebounding with 41.1 per game. Nationally, the Tar Heels were 7th in rebounds, and North Carolina has averaged 40 or more rebounds in 15 of the last 18 seasons. This has always been a strength for North Carolina basketball. And yet this year, you look at the roster, there's not a lot of plus rebounders up and down at each position. It's not just the center position. You have to be able to get rebounding from every single position on the basketball court. And I think that's a question at this stage for UNC. Harrison Ingram was such a good rebounder from that wing position. He would just crash the boards like a maniac, and UNC is going to miss that tremendously. Maybe they can replace some of that production from a freshman like Drake Powell. We'll get into both of the freshmen a little bit more later in the show. I also, Justin, want to talk about some of the summer scrimmages that you got to be a part of. This is really unique. Not everyone gets to scrimmage with the basketball team ahead of the season. I have not scrimmaged with the basketball team ahead of the season, but Justin has. You got a chance to play a little bit this summer in some of those pickup games. When you got a chance to play on the court with the team, who stood out to you? What were some of your takeaways from being on the same court as this UNC basketball team?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a few different things that you see. Obviously, RJ, the things that he did last year, it's going to be hard to really top. Um, but you can just kind of see just he's still maturing, still getting better. The game still just kind of seems like it's getting slower and slower for him, just making it easy for him to make certain reads, find times when to be aggressive to score, get other guys involved. So, like we talked about, he's kind of the constant that we know what we're going to get from him night in and night out. Something that stood out to me kind of throughout the scrimmages and even the camp game that I played in, which is something that we talked about a lot last year, was Elliott's shot making ability. I know last year, obviously, teams kind of guarded him in a way of, not really being afraid of his shooting ability. And so it kind of caused issues at times for spacing. If it's any indicator of what happened during the scrimmage and during those late night, late pickup games, he's put in a lot of work. His confidence is there when it comes to his jump shot. So whoever's been working with him, I'm gonna give the credit once again to my man NP. That's there working with player development. But whoever's working with him and the time that he's put in, at least what I've seen in the summer, has definitely shown. And so definitely excited to see that. I think obviously Ian coming in as a freshman. We'll talk about the freshman a little bit more, but Ian coming in as a freshman, I think it's going to still take some time just to kind of get used to the college game. But he's got some things that you don't have to teach. His explosiveness, his ability to score, just in general, I think it's pretty legit. And he showed that kind of throughout the scrimmages in just a bunch of different ways. And then you've got a guy like Drake who might not necessarily have, you know, as much hype as Ian when it comes to that, but his versatility and his length and his athleticism, it's totally different than what we've seen for a while now when it comes to the UNC wings. And so I think I'm very excited to kind of see him and just all of the different types of ways that he'll affect the game. Um, and so that's kind of what stood out to me. I think, another thing that is going to be huge for this team because they're not, they don't have an Armando down low, is just going to be their versatility. You've got a guy coming back like Jay Witt. You've got a guy like Jalen Washington. You've got another guy like Vin Allen who's coming in who might be undersized but can switch on defense and play a bunch of different roles offensively. And then you've got guys like Drake and Cade coming in that, at the end of the day, if you need to go small, just like they did last year, perfect. We'll throw one of these wings at the four, and we'll just be able to switch everything 1 through 5 defensively. And so, I think that's one thing that really stood out to me was there was, other than some of the big men, it was pretty versatile when it came to every that all the players, the things that they could do, and things like that offensively. So um, I think those are kind of the things that stood out. And obviously, it's been at this point 2-3 months since I was there and played. So I'm sure practices now starting, and even throughout the summer workouts and things like that, they've gotten even better and gelled even more and gotten used to each other. So should be exciting to see, as this season kind of starts off and the scrimmages and exhibition games and things like that.
I want to hold on the scrimmages for a second because I think a lot of our viewers don't understand how these scrimmages work. So it's you and some of the former players playing against the current team. Is there anyone of the former players that you want to shout out that still has it? Maybe you could shout out yourself. Maybe you shout out Kenny. Kenny's been putting in some work overseas. Maybe he turned some heads. Any of your former players that you also want to shout out here while we're talking about this?
Well, what stinks is we're running a little low on former players. You've still got guys killing in the league, and Kobe and Nas and those type of guys, and some of the older guys. But we were kind of running low when it came to the pickup games. Oh, can't forget Cole either. Um, but I got to give obviously Kenny. He's still going. He played well. Somebody that came in just out of nowhere and kind of put his stamp was Luke. Obviously, everybody knows Luke. And so those guys are obviously still kicking. But I mean, Cole came back and played in the camp game. He looked really good. Obviously, he's been killing it um, in the NBA. And so, there was a few guys. We had some fun. I'll say that we had some fun. Unfortunately, we came out on the losing side the week that I was there, which I think was one of the first times in a while. So, it takes a pretty humble guy to be able to admit that, they got us on that one. But, we had some fun. It's always fun to go back and play with those guys and just enjoy kind of where you spent a lot, maybe only 3 or 4 years, but feels like a huge chunk of your life when it comes to being in college and playing in college. So it's always fun to get back and just hang out with those guys and get back on the floor with them.
Let's take our first listener question of the night. If you're watching us live on YouTube, we're going to be live every single week at this time, Mondays at 8 p.m. We're going to get in just before Monday Night Football starts, so you can still do both. Don't worry, everyone. This is a question from Gavin Blankenship. He put this in the YouTube chat. He said, let's assume RJ is the second leading scorer. Excuse me. Let's assume RJ is the leading scorer. Who do you think is the second leading scorer for this team? Justin, there's a couple of different options there. Maybe one of the freshmen could crawl up on that list. Who do you think is the second leading scorer on this team?
I think that's why. I mean, that's a good question. I don't think we need to make any assumptions on RJ being the leading scorer with what he's shown in the past. So we'll just go ahead and say when RJ is the leading scorer. I think that's what makes this season so interesting and so exciting for me is because you really don't know. You want to say Ian or one of the freshmen, but I've from experience getting into the Dean Dome and going into these environments as freshmen, it takes time. It just does. It's just the way it works. Um, and so I want to say an Ian, um, but I think somebody that's going to be a dark horse and a real X factor because of his shooting ability and his versatility at times is Cade Tyson. Um, I don't know if he's necessarily gotten a ton of, quote unquote pub. Um, but I think somebody like him, I mean, coming in shooting 46% from three last year, obviously, hopefully it translates into the Dean Dome. But, if that translates and his ability to be able to play multiple positions at 6'7", I think is something that could end up being a real X factor. And so I want to put him in as the dark horse for the second leading scorer. But at the same time, you just never know. I mean, you never know. Elliott could end up coming out and he could end up averaging 15 points, and being a real knockdown shooter and aggressive and a big time scorer for this team. Jalen Washington might step into a bigger role, and he might all of a sudden, become this bona fide scorer down low and pick and pop threat and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's why it's so exciting for me, and I'm just ready for games to kind of start up because you just don't know. You can flip a coin and say, well, this guy might. But one thing we do know is RJ is going to be the main guy, and if a few guys can step up, if you can get one or two other guys that can be consistent scorers, uh, I think this team could. I think they've got some pieces that could make them pretty good. So um, I don't know, man. I think it's one of those things where when the big lights come on, who's really going to be there and who's really going to score? Um, you know, I know a lot of fans are going to be expecting certain guys to step right in and be that guy. They might even expect Cade Tyson to shoot 46% from three this year. Um, and there's just no telling. But I think as long as these guys are able to piece gel together and get the roles together as the season goes on, um, I think they could be a really good team. So we'll see. Only time will tell, man.
Let's talk a little bit more about the freshmen and shooting struggles there, because I think that's a really interesting topic. We've already talked a lot about how good RJ Davis is as a shooter, but as a freshman, he shot 32.3%. Caleb Love, all those years ago, shot 26.6% as a freshman. And then we've already talked a little bit about Elliot Cadeau and his shooting and whether or not he'll be improved. The numbers unfortunately do not lie for him. Last year he was an 18, I'll round up 19% three-point shooter. He was 10 of 53, which is not where he personally wanted to be. And I think that matters too, because we're going to be talking a lot about Ian Jackson and Drake Powell tonight, two freshmen for UNC who are going to be counted on to make shots and space the floor for the Tar Heels. So, Justin, the first part of that, let's dive a little bit deeper there. Why do you think freshmen struggle so much shooting the ball? And do you think Ian and Drake have what it takes to maybe buck the trend a little bit there?
Um, yeah, I mean, I can even throw myself in there. I think as a freshman, if I'm not mistaken, I think I was around 29 or 30% um, shooting the ball as a freshman, and I was supposed to be a pretty knockdown shooter. Um, why is that? I think you add it's a bunch of different aspects that people might not necessarily see, um, but the speed is different as a freshman. You're not necessarily used to playing as fast, and by the sounds of it from Coach Davis, he wants to be the fastest team in the country, which means they're going to be playing really fast. The physicality from each play is just totally different. In high school, a lot of times, especially if you're a top high school player, you can just kind of be on cruise control pretty much the whole game and still finish with 30 and your team win and that sort of thing. Now, you might not touch the ball for four straight possessions, but you have to fight over seven screens and you've got to box out a guy that might be bigger than you or little things like that that takes a toll on your body. So when you do get that shot the next time, you're either tired, you're fatigued, you're sore. Like there's so many different aspects to it. Plus just nerves. You get into that arena and there's, I don't, what is it, 19,000 people, 20,000 people in the Dean Dome. Um, and those lights are really bright. You've got all the sounds, the music, the cheering. Um, it can get to some people, and it just takes time to kind of get used to. And so I think all of those aspects combined is kind of why you see freshmen kind of struggle at times. Obviously, I hope that these guys step right in and they're 40+% 3-point shooters. Um, I think as we hit kind of on these freshmen a little bit, I think coming in, obviously, I think Drake was considered more of a little bit better of a consistent 3-point shooter. I think Ian kind of struggled at, at OT a little bit from the 3-point line. From what it sounds like, he's worked on it, and he feels good about the direction of where his 3-point shot is going. But you know, for them, I think it's just going to be just a bunch of reps. For me, every season that I got better shooting the ball, it was all based on the reps that I put in during the summer. And so then once I got into a game, my confidence was built on the fact that I had already put up so many reps and I've shot this shot before and I know how I'm supposed to shoot it. I'm shooting the same speed in my workouts and things like that so that when I get to the game, it's not, you know, yeah, I might be tired, but I've already shot so many shots tired like that that I still feel good about it. And so hopefully these guys are putting in a ton of reps. I know, player development is big there and they've been doing a bunch of player workouts. I know when I was there, they were still doing workouts and things like that with the players. So, um, I'm sure they're putting in the work. And so now it's just a matter of kind of seeing if it translates and hopefully it will. But I think that's kind of why you see freshmen struggle at times. A lot of times people just think, oh, they're just not actually shooters, but it takes a lot. It's a lot of adjustments just outside of being able to step on, a college court as opposed to a high school court. So, um, but I'm sure these guys are working. I'm sure they'll be just fine once the season starts.
I have to set the record straight there, Justin. Your freshman year, all those years ago, you were 30% three-point shooter, 28 of 92. That was part of the agreement for season 2, right? I was not allowed to bring any negative stats up about you. So I held up my end of the bargain there so we could keep this thing going for another year. I want to talk about one aspect of the freshman that we haven't hit on tonight, and with Drake Powell specifically. I want to talk about his defense because I think he is an excellent defender. He has really great foot speed. He's really long. He's just one of those guys who surprises you with his wingspan and things like that. He gets into passing lanes. He has anticipation, and I'm impressed by his shot blocking as well. I had a chance to watch him a few times. He played very close to Chapel Hill at Northwood High School, so I got to see a few of his games the last few years. And he can really he some people are shot blockers and he just sort of has that gene. It's timing, it's the length, it's the aggressiveness. I think UNC fans are going to be really impressed by Drake Powell's defense. I don't know if UNC's had a wing defender like that in a little bit, just a true stopper, someone who can protect the rim as well. I don't know if you've seen anything on that side of the ball for Drake yet, Justin, but I know for me, I'm really impressed by Drake Powell's defense.
Off this season, like you said, we've had a few guys, Leaky, JP when I was there at school, guys that were long, athletic. But this guy's I think he's a little bit different. Um, like you said, uh, he's very athletic. His instincts are really good defensively, which I think is big going into college and being able to transition on that side of the ball a lot easier and better than some guys. Um, like you said, he gets in the passing lanes and just his versatility. I think he's still strong enough to be able to play defense on guys that are maybe a little bit bigger, um, but also able to move his feet well enough to guard little guards as well. So I think that's going to kind of be his niche, that and getting out in transition, which with Coach Davis saying that he wants to play really fast, I think is going to fit perfectly into how he plays, especially to start out. Um, and I think for somebody like him, that's kind of where his confidence will begin to build more and more throughout the season. The more that he causes issues on the defensive end and gets out in transition and, maybe gets some dunks or gets some offensive rebounds and things like that, I think then you'll start to really see his shooting just start to, get better and better as the season goes on. So I think Drake is probably one of, if not the most, probably one of the most intriguing guys on this team to kind of see how he transitions to this level. Um, because at the end of the day, defense definitely travels. So it travels from one level to the next a lot easier than offense, especially going from high school into the Dean Dome. I can't stress that enough. So I'm very interested to see that and see just. I think there's going to be so many different places that his hands affect this game. Um, that we're going to see throughout the season. Just like kind of how you saw Harrison last season. He might not score 30 points, but he'll have 11 rebounds, or he'll have 8 assists to go along with 10 points and 9 rebounds. I think that's kind of Drake is going to affect the game in so many different ways. So he's going to be key for this team to kind of get to where I'm sure their aspirations are.
I'm going to take a quick second here, give another shout out to our sponsor, Johnny T-Shirt. They have an amazing store on Franklin Street. You can pick up UNC gear. They have an online store. You can check them out at their website to pick up any UNC gear that you need for the scrimmage this upcoming Saturday, for the football game against Georgia Tech. Anything you need, you can get it at Johnny T-Shirt. We appreciate them for sponsoring us. And we want to give a quick shout out as well to Congruity HR for sponsoring this show and all of Inside Carolina's podcasts. Justin, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ian and Drake as potential pros as well, because I think that's something that fans are interested in. I'll let you kind of take it either way if you want to talk more about Ian or Drake as a pro prospect. Bleacher Report has Drake 8th on the big board that they recently put out. Ian Jackson is 25th. As a first round draft pick yourself, someone who's played in the NBA, what do you see as their pro potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think to start with Ian, I think, like I said before, he's got things that it's just God given. His explosiveness, his ability to get to the rim, um, his scoring ability. It's just natural to him. So obviously he has that going for him. I think defensively, can he translate all that explosiveness and athleticism and ability onto the other end? Because I think a lot of times, if you're not one of those bona fide top 5 picks, defense is kind of where you have to find that's your role coming in, especially as a rookie. And so, is he able to translate all of that onto the defensive end as well? And then I think too, it's just, is he going to be able to prove that he can shoot the ball consistently enough um, and be a good enough shooter to translate to the next level? Nowadays in the NBA, you hear a bunch of people say it's basically positionless at this point. I mean, you've got 5 men taking 5 threes a game. And so you've got to be able to space the floor and be able to knock down open shots. And so I think that's going to be one of the key aspects as the season goes on. Can he show and can he consistently get better from the 3-point line? So I think his future is very bright. Whether it's he leaves this year and he's one and done, or he comes back and plays another year in college or whatever. I think he definitely has a future to play in the NBA. Drake, I think because of his defensive prowess and his length and athleticism on that side of the ball, especially, I think is why he's so much higher on the draft boards right now. Um, I do want to say these draft boards a lot of times mean absolutely nothing. And so, for the fans or even for players who might see this video or a video talking about draft boards, um, it's all about the work that you put in on the floor. You might have a lot of hype right now, and you might have, you know, a lot of people talking about you. But what happens between the lines as the season starts is really what's going to get you um, to that next level. And so I think that's very important to note. But I think with Drake, because he's 6'6", because he's long, athletic, has the ability to play, different positions, guard different positions. Just like Ian, if he can show that he can shoot the ball consistently from three, I think once again his future is really, really bright, and he could really work his way into being, in that top 10 type of range for the NBA draft. But like I said, it's what you do on the floor, and so hopefully he gets the real opportunity on the floor as well. I think um, that's another thing is that we haven't talked a ton about is kind of what the rotation is going to look like. I know a lot of people think, oh, these guys are top ranked freshmen. They should just slide right into the rotation and the starting lineup or this and that. But, depending on what the rotations might be, with all these guards that they have, plus we haven't even talked about Seth coming back. Um, you've got Elliott, RJ, Ian, Drake. You've got a bunch of different people, Cade. You've got a bunch of different people kind of in that 1 to 3, position, trying to vie for time. And so hopefully, those guys get the playing time to, if to show, the next level as far as I'm ready to go, or, just to get experience, for whatever the future might hold for them. So I think both of those guys' futures are nothing but bright. I think shooting the ball, just like we've talked about, quite a bit on this podcast. I think shooting the ball is big, and I see I see a bunch of different questions about the bigs, and obviously they
Mhm.
had James, who we haven't talked about too much. Um, I think James is one of those guys who he's got good touch, has good feel, but he's young. You can just tell he's very young when it comes to basketball. And so, um, I think for him, it's just going to be getting more and more of that experience. Um, will they rely on him for a lot of minutes? I'm not sure. If I had to guess, Jay Wash and Jay Witt are probably going to get a bunch of those minutes. So for him, it's just trying to get better and better each and every day. That's all you can really do as a freshman, and you know, eventually your time will come. So, obviously, I hope that all three of these guys, get to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish. Um, but that's kind of what I see from the pro aspect of things. And once again, they're just now making the jump from high school to college, and that's a different level in of itself. Now you're talking about from college to the pros, where okay, these are grown men who are trying to provide for their family, um, and the learning curve is even a little bit more. Things are called different things in the NBA, and different reads and different spacing and things like that. So I think for these guys, even if they are considered, top prospects NBA wise, trying to keep, you know, attack each day. I know for me, a lot of times it was, okay, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, right? So you're on North Carolina campus, you're playing for the North Carolina Tar Heels. That's exactly where you'll be. And that's where you're supposed to be. And as long as you take it day by day, I think Coach Davis said stack good days um, in his press conference. If you can stack good days, then you'll get to exactly where you want to be. But just don't take anything for granted, and don't try to wish away the time, because these college times are some of the best times. So um, I think they'll be really good, and their future is super bright.
I have a listener question that kind of hits on a little bit of what we were talking about. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Justin. I know this is a
Okay.
tough question. You can pick one part of it too. You can maybe just start with who starts game one, because I think a lot will change over the course of the season. But if you're the head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels, who are you throwing out there as your starting five for the first game of the season?
Oh, this is tough. Um, if I had to go off of uh, experience and ready to go, um, obviously I haven't seen practice. Nobody's really seen practice, or these workouts or anything like that. Um, I would have to go Elliot, RJ. Um, I think that three spot is where it kind of gets a little bit tough for me. I want to say Cade because it provides shooting. Because I think that Jay Witt and Jay Wash, I think they start at the 4 and 5. I think that's how Coach Davis would do it. So I want to say Cade Tyson, game one. So Elliot, RJ, Cade, Jay Witt, Jay Wash. Now come NCAA tournament time, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a lineup of Elliot, RJ, Ian or Drake, Cade. and then Jay Wash or Jay Witt. I wouldn't be surprised to see that kind of lineup at all come NCAA tournament time. Um, I mean, that's a lot of time for the freshmen to kind of mature and evolve and get used to all of the ins and out of college ins and outs of college basketball. So that's just a tough one. And I think that goes back to just not knowing really what, this season will look like. I know one thing when you have a guy like Cade Tyson, you can't keep him on the bench with the way that he can shoot it. So whether that means he's starting or he's coming off the bench, whatever it might be, um, besides RJ, I think he's probably your best shooter that can be on the floor. So you have to have that. Um, but then you've got some guys who have already been there before. You've got a guy like Elliott who has to play. You got obviously RJ. Nobody's moving that spot. And then you've got a guy like Jay Wash and Jay Witt who've been there for, now at least a couple years and, kind of your bigger players anyway. So I think that's one thing to kind of watch as the season goes on is how do they rotate guys like Ian and Drake and Seth and how do they kind of rotate them in to get them, at least enough time to get comfortable and get, a sweat going and kind of feel like you're a part of the game. So, I guess we'll see. But if I had to guess, those would be the two starting fives for both times. So I guess we'll see if I'm a modern day prophet or if I'm just totally off. I guess we'll see.
And we do not have to wait long to see what that starting lineup looks like. Let me give our viewers a little bit of insight into the early season schedule for UNC. So next Saturday, October 12th, UNC has the blue-white scrimmage. So you can purchase tickets for that online if you'd like to go watch the Tar Heels in the Smith Center. That one is 45 minutes after the end of the football game. Then there is a exhibition against Memphis, an exhibition against Johnson C. Smith before North Carolina starts the season in the Smith Center Monday, November 4th at 9 p.m. A late game. Justin and I will be live after that game, so that'll be exciting. Well, maybe have to get some coffee. Justin and I are getting pretty old at this point. That's past our bedtime, but that'll be a fun game. And that actually leads us into our last question of the night. This is a question for Justin and for the chat. If you're listening, let us know which game you're most excited to watch this season. There's so many options, Justin. There's at Kansas. There's Alabama coming to the Smith Center. There's UCLA at MSG. There's just so many choices. What's your game that you're most excited to watch so far this season?
Yeah, I think I'm super excited to see the new ACC. That's one thing I think I'm really excited to see is just the different teams, the Stanfords, the SMUs, all the different teams that are just in the ACC now. Um, but I mean, it's hard to really pick one. As a player, I always wanted to play in Allen Fieldhouse. I just always did. I always thought it was a super, super cool environment. I mean, and then you throw the fact that I think preseason wise, they're number one in the country. So I think that's an easy one to say that I'm really looking forward to. I mean, they've played the number one team preseason wise, the number two, Duke's number 8, they're number 10. So I think there's a bunch of different games, but I think Kansas is kind of what I have circled right now. And, I'll be locked into my chair and, I'll be ready to watch that. But I mean, there's a bunch of good games. You've got Florida and Charlotte. Um, like you said, you've got UCLA in New York. So it should be a fun season. At the end of the day, to be the best, you have to beat the best. So to have this kind of, I mean, at the end of the day, this is their non-conference schedule is it's pretty loaded. So I think we'll see really quickly what kind of team North Carolina has and the different types of players that he has, and I think it'll be fun to watch and just kind of see the evolution. Like I always say, uh, to all the fans, I know you've got a lot of those fans that think that life revolves around UNC basketball, and these freshmen should be averaging 20 a game off rip, and RJ should now bump up to 30 a game and all of these different things. But I think once again, I think it's going to take some time, and I think these guys, they're definitely headed in the right direction. If the summer has anything to give a quick preview of what the year will look like, and so I think we have to give them a little bit of time. I think obviously, they'll still have to step onto that court and be ready to go, but it's going to be an evolution, like I keep on saying throughout the season. You've got a bunch of new players, some freshmen that are supposed to be key for you. You've got some transfers coming in that have never played on the level of a North Carolina. And so just kind of seeing them gel and seeing them get better and better each game, I think is going to be great. Um, and once again, they've got a guy at the head that I think is the perfect guy for the job in Coach Davis. I still will not waver from that until I'm proven otherwise, and um, I will go. I will go to great lengths to defend Coach Davis. And so, when you have those connections, you've got a great coach, and you've got some guys that hopefully are hungry and guys that want to get better and better each day. I think this team is heading in the right direction, so it's exciting.
Justin, you have to be more careful in this day and age. You said, I always wanted to play in Allen Fieldhouse. You said Kansas is a great team. I see the headline now. Justin Jackson wanted to go to Kansas. Justin Jackson was a destined for Kansas or something. There's all these social media clips. You gotta be more careful than that these days. I'm most excited, by the way, for that game in Madison Square Garden. I think that's just gonna be so fun, especially with all the New York City kids that North Carolina has on this team. As you said, it's going to be an exciting season. Justin, I give the final word to you. Shout out the chat, shout out anyone who you want, and take us to close this out here in the end of our first episode of our second season.
Well, I mean, John, I'm just excited to be back. This is always fun to get on here and just kind of talk a little bit about something that's obviously near and dear to my heart. And I know you love North Carolina basketball and North Carolina sports in general. So just happy to be back for another season. And I guess this will be an every week thing on Mondays. So everybody make sure to continue to come check us out. We might have some stuff that gives you some insight. We might not, but you know, we love to have a good time. So appreciate everybody coming in and checking us out on this Monday, and can't wait for the next one.